So I want to turn now to the New York hush money case. And Katie, jury selection expected to begin on Monday. How exactly is that process going to work? How long could it take?
If I had that answer, I would bottle it and sell it, because we don't really know how long jury selection is going to take. I can tell you that the estimate from the court and all those that are involved is about 2 weeks, but it could be faster. And the reason why is if you get enough jurors, and there's been 500 New Yorkers that have received their notices, you know, those jury summonses that we all get, randomly selected from New York County. You've got 500 people that are going to show up on Monday. They're going to file into one big courtroom, and then 18 jurors at a time are going to be led into Judge Merchan's courtroom. They will be answering aloud next to the people that are sitting in, you know, their fellow New Yorkers, and in front of all of the lawyers as well as Donald Trump. They're going to answer the 42 questions that are part of a multi-page juror questionnaire that was released to the public by Judge Merchan last week. Some of the questions, Jose, are very basic, kind of like, what area do you live? What's your job? Have you ever been a litigant in a case? Have you ever been prosecuted for a crime? Standard questions that you would get for jury selection. But here's where they get really kind of drilled down, right? They do ask things like, have you ever attended a pro-Trump rally or campaign event? Have you ever attended an anti-Trump rally or campaign event? Have you read any of Donald Trump's books? Have you read any of Michael Cohen's books? I mean, these are the types of things that are asked. But what is not going to be asked? They're never going to ask a juror, what is your political affiliation, right? Like, they're not going to say, are you an election denier? Are you pro-Biden? They're not going to ask that. You're going to have to discern that as the lawyer based upon the responses. But after those first 18 are questioned by the prosecution and then the defense, the striking of the jurors happens right then for those 18. Meaning, if there's a for-cause challenge, say you say, as a juror, I cannot be fair and impartial. I'm always going to vote against Donald Trump. I will always find him guilty. You're immediately stricken for cause. That doesn't involve a lot of analysis, but it's the peremptory challenges. There's
and
only
how many
10.
does each side get?
So there's only 10 for each side for peremptory. For cause or limitless. Why? Because you want a fair and impartial jury. But the peremptory challenges are interesting, Jose, quickly, because A, there's only 10, and B, you usually don't have to give an excuse for the lawyer. I could say, you know, Jose, people with blue ties, they don't fit well with me. Right? Although, I mean, you're an exception.
Well,
of course,
no, you could say that.
But you could say that. In my mind, I could say, you know what? I think guys with blue ties, they normally are too conservative. I don't want them on my jury. Now, if the other side, though, says, I'm sorry, I think there's an ulterior motive. I think it may be based on Jose's race, religion, his national origin, et cetera. Then there has to be more of an inquiry made by the court. But once those 10 are done, Jose, it's done. And then once you get 12 jurors and 6 alternates, that is a jury that will sit in judgment of Donald Trump.
Just wondering, David, I mean, with all the pretrial publicity, the fact that who the defendant is it possible to find a juror who doesn't have an opinion about Donald Trump?
No, Jose, you make a good point. Unlike most cases, the criminal cases, that's not something that they can reasonably expect, certainly, especially in what was once Donald Trump's hometown of New York City. And he's had a long track record in New York. And not only does everybody know him, but people have strong feelings about Donald Trump even before he became president. In fact, at the Washington Post, we have a story that'll publish, I think, over the weekend about that very thing. How do folks in Manhattan and elsewhere in New York who've known Donald Trump for a long time feel about potentially having to sit in and be a juror? These are not necessarily those who'd be called, but what do ordinary New Yorkers think about Donald Trump? And that, you know, that's a question that is going to inspire a lot of emotion. So Katie's right. It's going to take a lot of work, I think, for the prosecution and defense to kind of work through this jury pool.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to that piece over the weekend. But Katie, so what is it that Donald Trump's team, what it's their best case scenario?
Best case scenario is they get jurors who say that they, in their minds, but they don't say out loud. And that's the danger, right?
Yeah, how do
I
you
know
know
David's going to agree with me on this too, right? So it's almost, you want to look for the jurors that you believe are telling the truth. Because how do you know, right? I mean, it's not like they're strapped to lie detectors and you can gauge whether or not they're telling the truth. But you can kind of discern it. Part of it is body language. I mean, there's a whole science that comes to jury selection. And my understanding is that Donald Trump will have somebody assisting him with this jury selection process. But there's a whole kind of cottage industry out there for jury selection consultants. They come and they sit with you and they help you figure out the body language of that juror. Or they also help you look at their social media history. So you may say one thing, but if your social media history suggests otherwise, that could be grounds to strike you for cause. But if you're Donald Trump, you want jurors that think that this is a political prosecution, right? You want jurors that think that this is a totally nothing burger case that has to do with payments made by Michael Cohen, who, if you're Donald Trump, you're going to say that as a liar. But if you're the prosecution, you want jurors that are going to understand that fair fair and impartial jurors look at the facts and the evidence, and they drown out the white noise, and they listen to what the witnesses say. But more importantly, in this case, there are documents that corroborate and substantiate what Michael Cohen, Stormy Daniels, and others have to say in this case under oath. And those documents do not lie, Jose.
White noise, boy, there's going to be a lot of white noise and a whole lot more. David, NBC News has obtained a list of potential witnesses for the trial. Is there someone you think could be the big one, the big star witness here?
Well, I mean, we know certainly that Michael Cohen, Trump's former aide and who has gone to prison in this very connected to this very case, is, essentially one of the key witnesses, and his testimony, which the defense will try to impugn as partial and not reliable, given that he himself has been convicted of a felony, is certainly going to be among the key witnesses. Stormy Daniels, of course, whose name is tied to this with the hush money payments to her, is another one. But, Cohen is the key one because, of course, the federal government looked into this very case and elected the Justice Department not to prosecute it, I think in part because they were concerned about his reliability as a witness. So, I think, Trump's lawyers are going to be, eager to kind of take him on. It'll be interesting to see him in the courtroom directly with Donald Trump there. Trump is required to be there for every day of the testimony. So I think a number of the witnesses will be interesting. It's going to be interesting, too, though, because some of this will be, highly technical tax related matters, because, of course, the charges Donald Trump is facing here really are highly technical, related to bookkeeping, records fraud, financial fraud. But of course, then there's the more lurid and sensational aspects of this, which is, of course, the connection of which he's not being charged to election fraud, essentially trying to bury the Stormy Daniels accusations, of course, before the 2016 election of an affair and keep that from the voters. And so you're going to have this high-low kind of issue going on between some of the most sensational kind of witnesses and testimony versus sort of the hard facts of the case.
And David, you recently wrote about how other countries have prosecuted leaders accused of crimes. This may be new to us here, but it's not new to other countries, although the nature of the charges certainly are.
The nature of the charges, of course, this is one of 4 cases where the president's been charged, former president's been charged. But we did look at other countries. France has prosecuted former leaders, including Sarkozy, who led the country about 10 years ago. And, of course, even in Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister, is currently facing charges, as is the former president of Brazil. So a number of countries have dealt with this. In some cases, though, those electoral systems have not only held up, but emerged stronger, including in South Korea, where a number of former presidents have gone to prison for fraud and abuse, but their electoral system and their democracy, essentially, and their judicial systems have held the test. And I think that's the question here. Certainly Trump, like Sarkozy, has talked about a witch hunt, and a number of these leaders use that to maintain their political power, as we've seen Donald Trump do. What I've been told by experts, though, is, of course, Trump is currently running for re-election and has sewn up essentially the Republican nomination. He has much more control of his party, continues to be the leader of that party. And, the United States has now faced this. So it is going to be a test for us as a country and as a judicial system, starting in New York. But certainly this may be the only one that takes place before the election. We'll see what happens. But there's the fact that the former president is facing 4 different prosecutions certainly adds to the questions here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking Berlusconi in Italy. We can also look at El Salvador. We can look at Guatemala, which has had its leaders
Fujimori
jailed.
down in Peru.
Fujimori in Peru, absolutely. And now we see, for example, what's going on in Ecuador. They arrested the former vice president going into the Mexican embassy there. But David and Katie, thank you so much. It's great seeing you both. I appreciate your time.
Hey everyone, MSNBC has a new and improved app. You'll get real-time alerts and analysis, live blogs, in-depth essays, video highlights, and the best 2024 election coverage. Download the new MSNBC app. Here's how to do it. You tap on the App Store on your phone. You hit search on the bottom right corner. You type in MSNBC. You click on the MSNBC app. You click on Get or the cloud icon and enjoy it.